Scroll online for 5 minutes and you'll hit a brick wall of conflicting financial advice. One side insists real estate is the only true way to build massive wealth. The other points to the relentless compounding of passive index funds. The historical data shows both paths work. If you execute consistently over 20 years, buying rental properties or buying the S&P 500 will make you wealthy. But comparing a rental property to a stock portfolio purely by looking at a spreadsheet of projected returns misses the actual cost. The numbers on a page don't measure your capacity for financial stress, your daily time constraints, or your absolute need to turn an asset into cash quickly. To figure out which path works for you, we have to look past the top-line numbers and map out the hidden daily inputs required to keep these investments alive. Pick an asset class based on someone else's internet success story without factoring in your own lifestyle limits, and you will buy yourself a second job you never wanted. Let's look at the stock market. This is the vehicle for the time-poor optimizer who requires total passivity. This line chart shows a $50,000 investment with $300 added monthly. Compounding at 10% annually, you reach $190,000 in a decade. Adjusted for inflation, actual purchasing power grows closer to 7%. Broad index funds add a 1.5% to 2% dividend yield, padding the total return. The appeal here is twofold. Managing this portfolio requires zero physical labor, and you can liquidate the entire balance to cash from your phone in seconds. The toll for that passivity is purely psychological. You have to possess the discipline to sit on your hands and do absolutely nothing while your net worth plummets. During the financial crisis of 2008, the S&P 500 dropped roughly 38%. It took years to recover. In March 2020, investors watched a sudden 34% peak-to-trough drop materialize in a matter of weeks. Index funds require absolutely no manual labor. You pay for your returns in emotional endurance, surviving periods where panic selling feels like the only logical option. Real estate operates differently. Buying a property means acquiring a part-time business. Today, you're navigating borrowing costs around a 7% mortgage rate. Historically, national property appreciation sits between 3% and 4% a year, depending heavily on the health of your specific local market. This scorecard tallies operational reality. After mortgage and taxes, a well-run rental yields a conservative 3% to 5% cash-on-cash return. But buildings decay. You must hold back 1% to 2% of the total value every year for mandatory maintenance. You can hire a property manager to take the late-night phone calls about a broken water heater, but their fees come directly out of your cash flow. If you face a sudden financial emergency, your money is trapped behind months of paperwork, closing costs, and the current mood of local homebuyers. Real estate cash flow is earned through active management. You trade your free time and your liquidity for physical control of the asset. The reason real estate creates so much wealth isn't the baseline cash flow, it's the ability to use bank leverage. Look at this comparison. Put $100,000 into index funds, you own $100,000 in stock. Use that as a down payment, you control a $500,000 property. When it appreciates 4%, you make that on the total $500,000 value, not just your down payment. That math works in reverse, too. If the local housing market drops, your losses are magnified just as violently. Beyond bank money, real estate gives you direct access to the tax code. Through a rule called depreciation, the IRS lets you deduct the theoretical wear and tear of the building as a paper loss, legally sheltering your actual income from taxes. And when you sell, a 1031 exchange allows you to roll your profits directly into a larger property, deferring your capital gains taxes completely indefinitely. Taking on debt risk, potential market downturns, and physical liability is the exact price of admission to access these government-backed wealth multipliers. This decision tree brings the choice down to a simple question. Do you have 10 or more hours a month to dedicate to wealth management? If you prioritize your free time and need immediate access to your cash, you forfeit leverage and choose the stock market. If you are willing to accept a part-time job to maximize tax write-offs and use bank debt to accelerate your net worth, you choose real estate. Staring at a spreadsheet of historical returns won't tell you how you'll react to a sudden stock crash or a tenant breaking a lease. Before you look at the projected returns of either path, did you include your own time in the calculation?